A large concerted counterattack staged by the two most powerful members of the coalition, the Tagada and the Date, failed. Thousands of troops were killed, and while this was only a portion of what they had still available, there was no reason to believe that repeating their attempt could lead to a different outcome. A stalemate was forming along the high roads linking central and eastern Japan, and in this lull, the Otomo family turned to the issue of Shikoku. Yoshiaki gathered his sons to conquer the island as a display of power, a display that the clan was instructed to interpret to decide who should be his replacement. He died soon after giving these last orders. Now Yoshishige and Sugatsura led armies to meet their father's challenge. Typical of Yoshishige to head east. The Miyoshi are there, a prestigious opponent. Or perhaps he wants to end up near the capital. But the master of this island must control its strategic crossroads. Tosa and Nagaoka. Those will be our objective. Are you listening? Sure, you're probably right. Can you point to Nagaoka on this map? No, that's where we are! It's here. These castles have quick access to the main roads. Yoshishige will be trapped on the coast if we win here quickly. You really hate him that much, huh? Hate him? What? He's the oldest. He's Shogun. Why are you pretending anyone will let you be Shogun? Because that was not Father's wish. I'm sure folk will take your word for it. Who wishes for Yoshishige to lead? They'll beg for my legitimacy to be honoured. They won't. He's in league with the Nanban spirits, and so are most peasants. This is all pointless. As you keep saying, but I will prove you wrong, brother, with or without your help. Hello there, welcome back to Barbarian Masters. While Sugatsura gets started on the Chosokabe, we're going to send Yoshishige off to the east to have a look at the Miyoshi. I spotted a castle to attack, but there was actually a full stack in reinforcement range that we couldn't see previously, and it's led by their daimyo, so their main force perhaps. Making this attack would be possible because we could use the siege map to ambush the enemy as they came on at the edge, and we could just leave the castle be until we'd finished off their main force. But I'm not going to do that just because I don't think that's Yoshishige's character. He is going to wait it out and see what happens. Now what actually happens is the Chosokabe sally against Sugatsura. They have the advantage here, so perhaps a right decision from them. Our army's quite small in comparison to theirs, it's just very elite. They've got loads of Ashigaru troops and even drafted troops who should be easy enough to take down, and they've got some special samurai since they are the Chosokabe, who we'll see in a moment. I got some pretty good terrain for this. As you can see, I've got a hill where I can put my multiple line formation and have my cannons sit at the top just blasting the enemy as they advance. So we'll pick up a few kills to start off, and then they'll charge up the hill at us and we'll move back ready to face them. We don't have all that much in the way of melee infantry, but what we do have, we'll have an advantage here because we can charge right downhill into their ranks. And where we're facing Ashigaru, which will be along most of the line, we're going to have a nice upper hand. We'll slash through them with samurai and hope to just rout them quickly, taking a lot of arrow fire, and that is going to be because so many of the Chosokabe samurai have the special ability where they can act as an archery unit effectively. They're all bow samurai, but they're also normal melee samurai at the same time. On our left flank, the enemy's cavalry was molesting us, but I was just dodging around with my own cav and looking for a decent engagement. On the right, I've drawn some of their samurai away, which is quite nice. They're trying to shoot at some of my cav running off into the distance, and that's stopping them from shooting at more valuable units, or actually just attacking in melee, which at this point would be pretty powerful because we don't have any melee reserve left. I caught one of their generals into a fight with some Yari Ki over here, or Yari cavalry, so we'll certainly win that. That's a good start. And along the front line, we're starting to see some results. The enemy's Ashigaru rout before the advance of our samurai. Now we can hack our way through to their archers, who are actually melee units once we get in close. I presume it's balanced in such a way that these guys are weaker in melee than normal samurai to account for them also being an archery unit. Not sure if that's how it works though. So yes, across the whole line we charge forwards and engage as much as we can into melee, and broadly speaking this is going to be successful. They don't have much in the way of numbers concentrated here because they attacked without their reinforcements. So this first army is now going to be overwhelmed by what we have left, and then we'll be pulling back to reform, ready to fight the reinforcements. Also their general, who was wandering about on our flank, gets cut down by a volley of arrows there, so that's going to help out as well. So you can see I've put the formation back together, and now we're just facing another battle right after that one in a very similar style. The only difference is the enemy have fewer samurai units, but then again so do I, because a lot of my samurai will have been killed fighting theirs just now. So our front line's a bit weak, but we can still go back up the hill and repeat the maneuver from earlier, just charging down into these Ashigaru. Many of them are just the worst unit in the game, drafted Yari Ashigaru, so our samurai should have a really easy time hacking through these guys, and we are going to be supported from behind by our guns and bows as well. Not to mention the cannons having already softened up a lot of the enemy units, and you can see their morale isn't very high. Units are routing as they come into the fight, and we've also got plenty of space to run forwards and attack the enemy's archers. Around this point everything just starts to rout all over the place. This second army didn't put up much of a fight, not liking the fact they were effectively fighting on top of all of the corpses of the first army. I had to chase them off the field to get some extra kills. We didn't really defeat the entire enemy force, perhaps we got 2/3 of it, and it only counted as a close victory because we lost so many high value units, even though our absolute number of losses was quite low. Right after that, the Miyoshi tried to push Yoshishige back. Their main force attacked, and this wasn't really the best battle to fight. I thought we may as well retreat from this and try and fight this army separate from the castle so the garrison isn't involved, although a second army appeared to move up there. What I'm going to do on this front is just use the fact that everywhere is forested to do an ambush. Basically, wherever we stand, we can set up an ambush, and they're also trying to ambush us. So if the enemy move forwards now, they'll immediately trigger an ambush, and hopefully that will give Yoshishige the upper hand. As for the Chosokabe situation, I thought maybe we could auto-resolve the survivors, but there's apparently another army that's getting involved here that we can't see once again. We've also not really killed much of that first army, so a lot of the samurai are still alive, and overall the balance bar isn't that good, so I'm going to leave that for another turn. You walk so boldly here among these all-knowing trees. You chatter so loudly here on these long-lived winds. You defile the home of the spirits that knew your very first ancestor. You deny the memory of the truth that gave Japan its power. You listen to foreigners first and your families second. You have lost the knowledge even of what you have lost. What end can you expect? What rest will you find? What tortures will you meet? What prison will you fill? The plight of those who bathe in lies is to walk beneath unclearing skies. To know betrayal is their only art, and they and home are worlds apart. Cast it away, cast it away, cast it away, cast it away! That good may come of evil's end. This is the only true amend. Nanban traitors, Nanban all, we the faithful cannot fall. The masters of the darkness moan, a world of death they seek to own. Demons, 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 be gone! I wanted to pull Yoshishige back across the border here so he could reassess the situation and replenish his army, but unfortunately we were in the zone of control of this hidden Miyoshi force, it seems, so we're immediately ambushed as we try to move, and now we'll just have to face it. The enemy have the advantage and the ambush's advantage, although in the battle the balance bar looks more even. We're going to immediately try to form up and get out of our initial column formation before the enemy close in from both sides. The terrain isn't too bad for us. We have a slight hill and a forest we can use to defend ourselves as we create our new formation. The enemy though have hand mortars, and we can already see the damage they're doing, blowing apart some of our samurai from very far away, and we really can't challenge them much, although my cannons have already started firing on them from the head of our column. So I did manage to get some sort of formation going, and we're just going to transition into a roughly normal kind of battle now. We were outflanked on our right side, and this general's Hatamoto charged all the way in, pushing my gunners away, but I did have these ninjas at the back guarding my cannon, so they're going to have to go fight those Hatamoto. Meanwhile, at the front of the battle, lots of explosions as the enemy hand mortars are just shooting into the melees now, probably killing a few of our enemies in the process, so that's handy. Finally, I get some cav around to start attacking these guys. There were 2 units, so that's only going to stop one of them from firing. The others will continue to terrorize us, and not really much we can do about it at this stage. They were for some reason trying to shoot at my cannons, which is a pretty good target for them, in terms of what we want anyway, because they won't get many kills, and our big blobs of troops here, who are in a very messy formation, are safe for now. So we're trying to shoot forward with all of our gunners and archers to help out the melee line, which is quite far forward actually at this point. That melee line is being blown apart, as you can see, by mortars from both sides actually. We do have hand mortars of our own in this battle. Now, we eventually got rid of the enemy's mortars at the back with a bit of determination from the cav, and more broadly things started to go in our favour as Ashigari units on the enemy's side began to retreat and our line was freed up. Here we had a little bit of a duel between most of my ranged stuff and some enemy firebomb throwers. They got a few kills, but of course they can't hold off against massive volleys of arrows, and we got rid of them in the end. So now it was just a case of securing our right, where there were still plenty of enemy units about the place, but we now have our whole army to start deploying against them. And in particular, we have these Portuguese pikemen who are just good against everything. They have very high stats, so they're just cutting their way through the enemy's samurai, and soon everything that's left decides to retreat. Those explosions there are my own men shooting at my own samurai. Thank you very much, hand mortars. But yes, that was the end of the fight. A decisive victory. Could have gone much worse as ambushes go. I think we had good terrain, and the way our column happened to be arranged as the battle started allowed us to form up very quickly. We are in bad condition and could really use some replenishment now, so Yoshishige's plan to march east has pretty much failed. We're going to have to just go back and spend a couple of turns regrouping before we do anything else, so he's going to be falling behind in the contest to make an impact on Shikoku. Meanwhile, Sugatsura is now going to make this attack, the one I skipped over last turn. Nothing changed, so we're just going to have to make it. We need to fight the reinforcement army first on the edge of the map. Now, I thought that army was the one we can actually see in the background in this shot, but it's not, as you may have worked out if you actually looked at what the units were, since we already fought that army before, and this army we're facing now is at full strength. The mystery became clear quite quickly as the fight started. I deployed on the western part of the map thinking I would fight those reinforcements who looked like they were off to the west, but no, it's actually an army from a clan that we couldn't see to our north that's coming in, sending a few reinforcements. So now we need to quickly reposition and try to fight those guys instead. While we do that, our cannons are just going to be blasting the enemy castle, and the men inside will not be having a good time thanks to some classic Shogun 2 weird physics. So we can use the wall explosion physics effect to demolish enemy samurai units, and since the samurai units are small, they don't have many troops in them, the damage this does is very big proportionally. We're going to be wiping out most of the defenders using that tactic. Meanwhile, the enemy's reinforcements are forced to come towards us somewhat by the fact they need to get to the gate into the castle, which is on the west side. So that's going to help us out. They can't sneak into the castle before we attack them or anything. And all the while, more and more casualties being done to the enemy. Lots of their archer samurai who could make an approach to the difficult were killed here. That explosion killed about 90% of one of their samurai units, their most powerful one, so that was all good to see. Now soon we get a small regular field battle as the enemy's reinforcements face our army. Our army is quite a lot bigger and more powerful than theirs, so not expecting anything too difficult. They come and form up right in front of us with their katana samurai taking the brunt of my gunnery attacks, even though it looked like some other units were actually closer. I think fire at will, sorry, was being a bit weird there. They start firing back and inflicting casualties on us, but we're going to soon put an end to that. Their archers on their left side were exposed with no melee melee units behind them, so my cavalry who have snuck around can go for a rear charge, and since they were only Ashigaru, they're not going to put up with this, they're just going to rout and immediately the enemy's formation is falling apart. We even have a special unit to use on the other side of the enemy's army, these Otomo Conqueror Heroes. This is a mounted gun unit using Portuguese troops, one of the highest level, or I think the highest level Portuguese unit you can get. Not especially effective because there's not very many of them, but it did prove to be a very useful distraction that allowed us to just swamp the remaining enemy troops and get rid of them with our samurai. So now only a very easy castle assault remains. Such incontestable power. What matter is a castle imbued with 10 years of labour by 1,000 men when it can be deconstructed in a day? It is true, Japan has no defence against Nanban weapons. Or at least it didn't. All these lords and noble houses who refuse to change, who can't grasp the value of firearms, of cannons, of sail ships. If the Nanban came in force, they would have fallen without a fight, just as they do before us. This then shall be the legacy of the monster Yoshiaki, a free Japan. We have their weapons, we have their god. The Nanban will be unable to bully us any further. If only their lapdog Yoshishige would cease listening to the will of that Roman priest. When Japan is unified under me, the Nanban will learn the strength of the people they thought subservient. Here's the result then, a couple of units now at very low strength, but no units lost in the fight, and the castle was captured, so we'll be replenishing now. We'll have to deal with those rebels at some point, but that's not going to be an issue, it's just a few damaged Ashigaru units. What I want to know is what's going on just to the north, where we now know there's another enemy waiting for us. Here they are. Our spy jumping out of the ship immediately smells that there are this many Ashigaru units here with a whole load of generals, not a particularly powerful army, so we'll go and deal with that later. Now, a small clan called the Yuki challenge our front line, where Kobayakawa was guarding a river crossing, and some Takeda armies are drawn into this fight, making it pretty substantial, so I had to fight it. As mentioned in the previous episode, I'm not really going to focus on these frontline engagements because I'm mostly just holding position or advancing if it's particularly easy, so not much remarkable will happen, but this was a somewhat interesting fight, so we'll take a little look. I formed up at the crossing points to defend against the Yuki's initial attack. I've got an allied force, the Shibata, sneaking in behind me, and they were going off to the left, and that made me realise there's actually reason to defend up here. There's another crossing point right on the edge of the map that doesn't really appear on the mini-map that we may have to deal with as the fight goes on. The Yuki began by crossing the bridge right in front of us, their general leading the attack and not doing so very well. He's getting shot and then promptly attacked by spears. My spears weren't actually in the right position because this replay is very corrupt and we'll be moving out of it in a second. But representing what happened to start things off, they attacked us across both river crossings and I used long Yari Ashigaru to defend. You can see there's a bit of smoke around the place. That's because the Takeda brought more of those annoying hand mortars and they were attacking our position, the perfect unit for contesting a river crossing. So now here we are in the live footage. The Takeda have indeed sent a couple of units around that cheeky crossing at the top, and I'm sending tons of Ashigaru to just stop them and then push through to outflank the enemy later. That's the vague idea. Meanwhile, the Yuki actually only made a very small attack over this bridge with a couple of units and it had no chance of getting through. We just annihilated them with guns and arrows and used some long Yari Ashigaru to hold them in place. The main attack was happening through the ford, where the Takeda army all blobbed up and tried to cross. So my battle plan is to just cycle units through the front line, trying not to lose any full units there, and generally stopping the enemy so we can gradually outflank them. Another priority target are those mortars, of course, trying to micro some cav to get around and take them out, and we are going to be crossing over both of the other river crossings in order to enact our outflanking plan. Our cavalry do manage to deal with the mortars and can then take on archers back there as well, and my outflanking units from the initial bridge who arrived sooner were enough to start demoralizing and destroying the enemy. Soon enough, everything that was trying to make the crossing routes, and there's just an absolute slaughter as we destroy the enemy where they stand. Many of them trying to escape, but we will chase them down. I would just end the battle here and see what happens on the battle result, not bother chasing down the reinforcements, but I'm kind of forced to because the game glitches and actually doesn't end the battle, so I have to now wait for the time limit to run out. This is because of cannons. The enemy had cannons in their army and they technically can't reinforce, but the game only half knows that. So I think it thought there were some invisible cannons somewhere on the field, and we even captured them apparently. So that was the end of that after a very long wait. We didn't lose any full units and we'll be able to replenish. Our vassal, though, the Shibata, decided to charge forwards and try to attack the survivors. Problem with this is it draws in another fresh full stack led by the Takeda's new faction leader, in fact, into this fight. And I don't want to take part in it because our army is damaged, so I just said no. I think the Shibata lost a number of troops in an auto-resolve trying to do it. And then at the start of the next turn, I do actually move out to kill the survivors using my now somewhat replenished army to get a safer auto-resolve. That not only stops them from attacking us again, but will allow the Shibata to retreat back to safety if they want to be less brazen. This isn't the end of the fighting around this part of the front line, but as I said, I'm not really going to focus on it, so we'll just skip through as much as we can and get back to the contest on Shikoku. Sorry, I can't take much more of this. Every time we beat them, they sweep up another few thousand peasants from the hills and try again. They're destroying themselves to keep their rebellion going. We have more manpower, yet fewer soldiers, because we know that the whole point of this is to end the war, not to accelerate it beyond all control. I believe they consider it a matter of principle, my lord. They consider not their own lives, nor those of the people they drag into this. It is despicable, but at least they are incompetent. Consider the Shibata. Is what they are doing not the same? They are so passionate to make a name for themselves that they will ignore the dangers of war. That's because they are inexperienced. The Takeda clan must have retainers who have witnessed the war, who will understand why they must stop. If they had them, my lord, I suspect the passions of the new generals we see drove them to silence such opposition. You're right. They're in as much chaos at the top as at the bottom. I wish they would pull themselves together. I'm tired of killing them. I'm tired of teaching this lesson they won't learn. Instruct the captains to repeat my orders from before. Defend the crossings and crush the enemy once they reach the river. The water will clean away some of the mess for us, at least. Another ambush has come up for Yoshishige. This time he's the one doing the ambushing though. The Sogo have sent an army under their faction leader, who happens to look the same as Yoshishige used to look, to try and sneak into our territory here, and we've got the ambush, so might as well give this one a go. I'm going to be doing an ambush at a distance here because our army has cannons and because it's generally so focused on ranged units. We don't really want to suddenly spawn next to them and go straight into a melee fight. We're going to sit on this large hill in the distance and rain fire upon the enemy. They're going to get out of their initial column formation and try to get a battle formation going, which just buys us more time to rain stuff on them, and we're going to get plenty of kills as we do so. Eventually though, the enemy will have something together and will be able to advance towards us in good order, still taking more losses of course, and we're trying to focus down some of the higher quality units in there like their samurai with our cannons, since shooting into the massed Ashigaru doesn't do all that much damage proportionally. Soon they get closer and it's now up to our guns to add to the mix. We also have hand mortars and archers to throw things at the enemy, and overall their leading units are just having a really bad time gunning down some katana samurai there. They outflanked us on our left with some Naginata Ashigaru, but I hit some ninjas over here as well, so they're going to block them and make sure nothing goes wrong there. They're trying to outflank with cavalry on the other side, but I've got my own cav ready to stop them. Plus, this unit, which is successfully outflanking my Naginata Samurai, is going to have difficulty because it can't beat them, and nothing attacks the Samurai from the front, so they can just turn to face those cav. Meanwhile, across the front line, the regular fight will get started. We'll just let the enemy charge into our men. We don't have much in the way of melee troops, just a really thin line, but the quality is high, so hopefully that gigantic enemy blob will be held off. As for the archers behind them, once they set up to start shooting at us, our hand mortars will be able to do lots of damage there. Our ninjas were attacked by an enemy general, so that's going to be quite difficult for them to win, especially after having just gone through a fight. I wanted to support with my own cavalry, but the enemy had spearmen chasing them away. They've also got more samurai chasing some of my gunners away there, but we'll just let that happen because it's taking the enemy out of the fight, so it's as good as defeating them in some ways. And as for the main fight, gaps are opening up. That's going to allow our gunners to shoot through and damage the archers even more. We killed one of the enemy's officers out on the left and freed up some cavalry for flank attacks. And back on the right, I somehow did a switcheroo and ended up with my ninjas fighting the enemy spears and my cav fighting the enemy general. That's the far superior arrangement. I believe their general and their faction leader there will be going down in that engagement. At the same time, the rest of the fight appears to be victorious for us. Most of their melee infantry is falling back, and the remaining archers are being blown to pieces, those on Otomo being some of the last to retreat, but finally even they realise there's no hope here. The battle ended with me having to go out and fight these two units of bow samurai that were standing on top of each other on this hill. This is a strange thing that has happened a couple of times before in this series. The AI has a mysterious behaviour where it will hide two units of specifically bow samurai off to the side from the main battle. Not really sure why it does that, perhaps some sort of broken ambush programming going on. Anyway, so we won quite easily, loads of enemy casualties, not much on our side, and we will get replenishment after this battle as well, so we may end up still with more troops than we had before. All good stuff from Yoshishige there. The question now is, can we actually make any progress? We still haven't taken any territory even after these victories, and that's really what we need to do. Sneaking up, I can now see that the Miyoshi castle doesn't have an army garrisoning it, so we may have a chance to take it, so we will take that chance by going for it. As for Sugatsura, there are two possible threats. There's the north and the west, and I'm using my ninja here to scout out what's over to the west. It's a longer route, but there is an army at the end of it. This army would probably take a couple of turns to get to us though, so we may be safe to ignore it and go for the much shorter attack, taking that castle to the north. This castle is nice and strategic as well, because it controls the route from the northern part of the island to the southern part, or the shortest route I should say. Nothing too special in terms of their army, but I'll just try and siege them out, see if they sally, since it looked like they had a small advantage. The AI might want to make this a nice easy field battle. Even if it's not, we do have cannons, so attacking the castle wouldn't be the end of the world. Now in the Miyoshi turn, we get some more harassment from an enemy monk shouting down Yoshishige's army. Then an enemy army appears, and this time we're going to take this fight. It's a not particularly strong looking army, loads of drafted troops, so if we can hack through these guys, we'll hopefully still be in good condition to go on and make that castle assault that we were looking for, so we'll get into that next time. The invasion of Shikoku, while in some ways achieving strategic surprise, was not something that went unforeseen. The lords of the island had been preparing their people for years, and so when the inevitable Otomo attention arrived, armies sprang up to vastly outnumber the invaders. This then was the challenge that the clan retainers expected the next generation of rulers to overcome. Only Sugatsura saw success, sparking hope that the less legitimate but perhaps more practical choice could one day be accepted. But all those who knew Yoshishige understood that he wouldn't allow this without anything less than a command from God. That is it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and very special thanks to the OfficiallyDevin patrons for making all this happen. Yoshishige's attempts to win glory against the Miyoshi are going to end up putting him in much more danger than he's seen so far in the next episode of Barbarian Masters.